Okay, let's talk about something completely different. This is a Thunder Launcher 500 or TL 500. This is used for training dogs for hunting, and what you do is you put a propane or some other type of gas cylinder here, and this has a remote like a key fob remote, and when you click a button, this will fire a fake duck out, and then the dog goes and grabs it and brings it back. And I'm doing this repair for a friend of mine who does dog training and other such events and stuff. It's not really my world, but this has a problem, and we're going to attempt to fix it for my friend. So if you take a look on the inside, you'll notice there are two cams on a shaft and a gearbox, and there's a gas pipe that goes to a like a torch, like a handheld torch push button plunger thing, and that sends the gas to a combustion chamber back here. And so what happens is that cam will rotate a little bit, pushing in the button, filling the combustion chamber with gas. Then it rotates a little bit more, which will fire it, and then that will shoot out the fake duck. And then the whole thing rotates to the next chamber. It has 5 barrels on it. And the other cam right there activates a switch, which has that stop at the correct points. And of course, they have to be timed. And the main problem with this, there's a couple of problems. There's actually 3 problems we're going to try to fix. One is the fact that that cam there tends to get a little bit loose and can move around a little bit. The other problem is the whole combustion chamber and igniter part is also a little bit loose. We can see, here's the other side of it. My friend put the tie strap on here because this whole thing would just move around and was very loose. But the main problem, the main thing we're going to fix is the cylinders here. They get a little bit loose, and we'll see the problem with that here in a second. So again, this is quite a bit different from my typical video. The main purpose of this video is to show others who have one of these how to take it apart and how to fix the problems. If you don't have one of these or don't use one of these, then this video probably won't mean a whole lot to you. But apparently this is a fairly common problem, so I just wanted to address it and document how we can fix it. First thing we want to do is now this has already been taken apart once, so everything's a little bit loose. But first we take this bolt out right here. And then this pulls off. Again, that was easier than normal because I already had it apart. And you can see the hole there and then the shape at the end of the shaft there. You'll also notice the bushing is missing. Again, I've already taken it apart. And when I put it back together for this demo, I forgot to put the bushing back in. But here is the bushing, and this is the cause of the problems. For those of you familiar with 3D printing, you'll quickly recognize that this is a 3D printed bushing. And apparently, from what I've been told, when these were first manufactured, I forget what I was told. They were either brass or bronze, or they were like a nylon or Teflon bushing. But to save money, they started 3D printing them. But then they also say that since these are kind of handmade, that they're all slightly different. Like that hole might be very slightly different from one unit to the next. So they have to 3D print them to get a good fix. However, you tell me, is that a good fit? And this is not because it's worn. You know, that's not worn out. That is exactly as printed. So they went to the trouble to 3D print a bushing, but they didn't even bother getting it close to the correct size of the hole. I mean, that's insane. So there's that much play in the end of the shaft. So we are going to replace this bushing, and there's a handful of options. First thought was to just 3D print another one. Now, in my opinion, 3D printing is a good tool. I use 3D printing quite a bit on the channel, but for something like this, when you look at the robustness of this unit, 3D printed bushing here just, to me, does not seem like a good fit for a 3D printed part. I can imagine this eventually cracking, wearing out, or failing some other way. So I don't think a 3D bushing is the best thing to do here. Again, that's just my opinion. I could be wrong, but I don't think 3D printed is a good part, especially if it's that bad of a fit. So the other option is to print or to turn one on lathe out of brass or bronze. But then I remembered a material that's cheaper than brass or bronze, and it's made for areas that are hard to get at to lubricate, and that is Delrin. So my friend ordered a rather large chunk, actually 2 of these pieces of Delrin. Plan is we can make several if we need to. And because not only, actually this one belongs to a friend of my friend, and my friend has one of his, so I'll actually be repairing 2, this one and my friend's. This is a nice big chunk of Delrin, and we'll be making some bushings out of this. Also, one reason why it's such big diameter is because one concern I had was making sure that the shaft turns into bushing and not the bushing turning inside of this piece. So by having a large flange, we can put some countersunk screws in that flange, locking it to this piece. That way it won't spin or come free from this piece here. And it'll only turn that shaft inside of there. Now to get good measurements and to fix the issue with that bushing, or with that cam right there, we need to take the shaft out. Now that shaft screws onto the gearbox. That bolt goes through the gearbox and screws onto the shaft. So we need to break that loose. Now, one thing you really got to be careful of with this unit, if any of you own or operate this unit, make sure to never turn this clockwise. You only want to turn it counterclockwise, because if you turn it clockwise, the lobes of that cam will catch that leg of that micro switch and you'll bend it. So you got to make sure you turn that counterclockwise only, or you'll damage that switch. Now this cam has a set screw in it that I've already loosened, so I'm going to move that out of the way. I'll show you where that set screw goes here in a minute. And then we also need to move this one back. Now that one doesn't have a set screw. From the factory, they basically just put some electrical tape on the shaft to keep it from moving that way, and a bushing on that side keeping it from moving that way. But even with those high-tech solutions, that would still kind of wobble and become loose. So I peeled the tape off. It's yellow tape, so you want to peel the tape off and then shove that cam towards the center. And it's a little tight, getting your hand in here. All right, so now both of those cams are together. They're between the plunger and the switch. And then you can loosen this shaft. Again, when you're taking it apart for the first time, it's going to be really tight. So I had to hold a wrench on the back side of the nut here and put an adjustable wrench on the flats here to turn that loose. And right now, there we go. And then we can turn this. Notice how that's contacting the switch right there? So if you turn it the other way, you'll damage the switch, as we said before. So just turning this so it comes free from the gearbox. All right. And then we can just pull that shaft out. And there's the shaft right there. And then we can reach in and grab the cams. Now I've already marked the cams because if you put them in backwards, the timing will be off. Notice there are flats, so we could go in this way or this way. But I put a mark here indicating front, and I put that mark there indicating where it goes on the shaft right there. And the set screw, you can actually see where the set screw dug in here, and that set screw went in right there. And what we'll do is we'll drill and tap this for a set screw. That way they'll both be locked in with set screws. But the first thing we need to do is take some measurements here so we can turn down a new bushing to put there. Now there was a bushing on the other end, but it was just as loose a fit here back there as this one was here. So it was literally doing nothing supporting that shaft. The only thing it was doing was preventing this from shifting back too far. So when I put the set screw in, there's no need to put another bushing in the back. You can get rid of that bushing in the back. Because even if you did make that bushing fit, keep in mind it's bolted to the shaft of the gearbox here, and there's a bushing here. So if you put another bushing, now you're putting 3 points of contact. And if they're not perfectly lined up, you're going to bind up the gearbox. So the back bushing is completely pointless. It'll be held at the shaft at the gearbox here, which the gearbox has bronze bushings. So it's held, supported here, and it'll be supported here, and that's all you need. That's perfect. And 99% of the force and the stress on this shaft is at the front cage here that has the that has the 5 barrels. So there's really no stress on that back end, only on the front end. So let's get a bushing turned down on the lathe and get that drilled and threaded, and we'll start putting this back together. Then we can address this thing being too loose. Okay, here's the bushing all installed. 3 countersunk screws. I believe those are 1032. And I've got some, if we take a look on the back side here, got some fiber lock nuts holding those in. So that bushing is nice and secure now. And it is a very good fit in the hole. Basically, well, as far as I can tell, all of these holes are water jet cut, I think. The surface is really rough, and when I measured the diameter, it wasn't like perfect circle. It was, you know, a few thousandths off depending on which way you measured. So I turned the bushing down until it felt like it was going to be a tight press fit into the hole, and then I sanded the inside of the hole until it slid in like finger tight press fit, if you know what I mean. And also the inside hole here, I made that to where it was also a pretty good press fit onto the shaft, and then I sanded it until it went in nice and smooth. So there's no slop, there's no play in that at all. So that part is done. Also, as you can see here, this is the shaft with the 2 cams, and I drilled and tapped a hole here for a set screw, and that's to lock that cam on place. Because another common problem with these units is this cam gets all worn out and gets kind of floppy and sloppy in there. So put a set screw there, and so now those cams are locked on tight, and that's done. One other thing to mention, this normally has a cover on it, but my friend took the cover off before he gave it to me to fix. So that switch would be mounted in the cover, for example. Also, the thickness of the flange, it had to be thick enough so I could countersink the screws in there. And the screw heads are just a little bit lower than the surface here because I don't want the screw heads rubbing on the big piece that goes here. And also, you don't want that so thick that it rubs on this piece right here. So once this is bolted up tight, you don't want that rubbing on the bushing. So that's probably, I don't even know if I mentioned this or not. I forget if I told you this or not. But before I took it apart, with this thing bolted on tight, I stuck some feeler gauges down in between there to measure the gap. And I made that bushing just a little bit less than that gap. That way I knew that when this is bolted on, it wouldn't rub on this, because you don't want it binding everything up. You don't want to tighten that bolt down and have it pinch onto that flange and start binding things up. All right, now, just a couple more things about the bushing here. The outer diameter here, when my friend was looking for material, He first said he found some 1.5 inch diameter, which would have made about a, I don't know, about a 1/4 inch flange. And then he's found some 2 inch diameter, which is what this is. This is a 2 inch diameter. And he asked if that would be better. And I told him, I said, well, a 2 inch diameter would be easier to make. It'd give me a lot more room to put some screws in here, but it also cost a little bit more money. Now, a smaller diameter with a smaller flange, you would have to put smaller screws, maybe like a 440 or a 632 would be fine. 1032 is kind of overkill. I mean, a 440 would have been perfectly fine. But I'm kind of thinking that the bigger flange is probably better, because one other common problem with these is that these are really front heavy, and apparently it's common for these to tip forward and fall out, and the whole unit falls off of the guy's tailgate or falls out of the back of their truck because they set them down and the front is really, really heavy and they just fall over and they land on this, which doesn't do this thing any good at all. So I'm thinking with a larger diameter flange and it being really close to this, close but not touching, if it does fall and hit on this, then any flex, you know, I'm thinking maybe that larger diameter being really close to this could help protect the unit and prevent any damage, maybe. I really don't know if that's true or not. I'm just kind of making stuff up at this point. But it helps me justify the fact that my friend spent more money on a bigger diameter flange when a smaller one might have been okay. Now, Ray, in all fairness, I did tell you a smaller one would have been okay, and it was up to you, and you chose the bigger diameter, so, you know, it's like $10 more. But anyways, so I also want to add that if you're trying to repair yours and you don't have a 3D printer or you don't have a lathe, find a friend who does. If you have a friend with a 3D printer, you know, you could 3D print the bushing. It would probably be fine for quite a long time. It's just that you might have to reprint it multiple times until you got it to fit just right, or print it just a tiny bit big and sand it to fit. That would probably work fine. Or you could do, you know, if you got a friend with a lathe, you could do Delrin, or you could do bronze. You know, whatever material you can get. I don't really think I want to go into business repairing these. But I suppose if you're in a major bind and you have no other options, you know, drop me a comment. Maybe we could work something out. I can't make any guarantees on how quick I could get it done for you, but I'm not going to say definitely no. I'm just saying maybe, you know, use me as a last resort if you need yours fixed. That's all I'm saying. Anyways, so the bushing is in, the bushing is done. These are done and ready to go. I just got to pop these off and put it all back together. So let me get this together, and then we'll see what we can do about fixing this. The combustion chamber there, getting that kind of stiffened up a bit. Okay, so here it is all back together, and as you can see, there's like no slop in here. I am trying. I just realized I didn't show you beforehand, before I did anything, how sloppy it was. This thing was moving back and forth at least 1/8 inch or more. Now there's like nothing. Now it can do this. That's just the backlash in the gearbox. But side to side, there's nothing. And front to back, there's nothing. That's just, again, the backlash in the gearbox. And just taking a look inside here, there's the cam that activates the gas button. And there's the cam that activates the switch. And they're all nice and tight now. So now what I need to look at is the fact that this is loose. So every time that cam comes around and pushes that yellow button, the torch unit moves back a little bit, which could throw off the timing a little bit. So the more I'm looking at it, though, the more I'm realizing that this was not designed with anything to hold that perfectly stationary. There's no clamps, there's no brackets. It's just kind of held in its space. So maybe I'm overthinking it, but my first thought was to put a bracket and a hose clamp around the combustion chamber here, just to keep it solid. But apparently whenever this fires, there's quite a bit of kickback, quite a bit of force going back. So again, I might just be overthinking it, but it might be possible that if you solidly mounted that to the rest of the frame, that every time it fired, it's going to be stressing out everything, and then things could start to crack later on down the road. Maybe. I don't know. Like I said, I'm just making stuff up and overthinking things. I think the best thing to do is just keep it from rattling. I have a rubber pad that I can put in. That switch out of the way. I have a rubber pad that I can put in between the torch handle and the frame and zip tie that in place. That would give that some cushion and support for moving back when the button was pushed. And then I'm thinking just some red RTV on the end here and some red RTV on the end here or in there somewhere. Again, just to keep it from rattling. Because it can't go anywhere. I mean, it's fully encased and fully trapped. I think we just need to keep it from rattling and limit the movement when the yellow button's pushed. So let me get some stuff done in there and we'll show you what that looks like. Okay, I'm going to call this done. My plan was to wedge this piece of rubber in between the handle and the frame, but that was actually too thick to fit in there. I couldn't get that to go in there. So that piece of white you see there, that's actually a zip tie, and that locked it in solid. And I just put some red RTV there to help cushion it. I put some red RTV there, and I put some red RTV there. So the red RTV is just there to keep it from rattling around. That's all. I'm not saying it is the best fix, but I am saying that it works and it is removable. It is temporary. I did not permanently alter anything. So as far as I'm concerned, it will work perfectly fine. But only time will tell. You know, if it doesn't work out, then like I said, it's not permanent. It can be removed. Something else can be done. But I'm 99.9% sure that this will work perfectly good now. So the bushing is good. Bushing's tight. The cams are locked in tight. The burn can or the combustion chamber does not rattle or move around. So I'm calling this done. Now, just a few other things to mention. First off, if you're watching this video because you have one of these and you're trying to see what to do with it, or you're a dog trainer, or you're looking into buying one of these, or something along those lines, hopefully this was useful for you. Hopefully it was helpful and you got something good out of it. And if you enjoyed it, please feel free and comment and share. However, I would recommend that maybe don't subscribe based off of just this video, because this is not my normal channel. And if you subscribe because of this, then when my next video comes out, you're going to be very disappointed. So check out my other videos. And if you like that stuff, then please consider subscribing. I would appreciate it. Now, if you're here because other reasons and you don't have one of these and you have nothing to do with dog training and you've never seen anything like this before, well, first off, thanks for watching through the entire video. I'm not going to say that was weird, but I appreciate you watching, and and thank you for hanging in and watching. And hopefully it was entertaining. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, personally, I think it's kind of boring. Not this. This is very cool. I just meant my presentation of it might have been a little boring. I'm going to try to get some footage of it being used. So if I can find some footage of it being used, stay tuned. Next couple of seconds, you'll see it actually being used. If not, I apologize. But as always, thanks for watching.